Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Academic Learning Center AI Hub workshop on effective prompting. We're going to get right into it, but the goal is to make sure that we are learning something new, and hopefully, you can receive something at the end of this workshop. So, again, the goal here is to not become an expert on effective prompting, but we just want you all to leave knowing how to ask better questions so that AI can become more useful for you in your academic and professional work. So, what is AI? This is the official definition of artificial intelligence. It refers to technology systems and software that are designed to perform tasks similar to human intelligence. This could include problem solving, decision making, or understanding language. So, again, AI is not new, it just looks different. We've been using AI since, back in the 80s and 90s with computer programming. If you've watched Netflix or have used social media in the past 24 hours, then you have used some sort of artificial intelligence. So it's not new, it just looks a little different. But what is AI prompting, right? What is an AI prompt? So a prompt is the input you give an AI tool, and it tells the AI what to do and how to respond. And also, prompts help shape the tone, depth, and usefulness of what you're trying to accomplish. So, think of an AI prompt as more of directions for AI, right? Artificial intelligence, it is powerful, but it can't read our minds. So, the quality of what you put in it is what you're going to receive. And it really just depends on how well you're explaining what you want and what it's for and what should the final output look like. So when we think of a writing prompt, we think of the writing prompts like for humans, but the difference between an AI prompt and writing prompt looks a little different. So for a writing prompt, this is for humans, right? This is for us. It's a phrase, question, or scenario, and it activates human creativity. And the goal of it is inspiration and personal expression. Whereas an AI prompt, which is the input for AI, is a text, a code, or a set of directions, and it's given to a generative AI, so like a chat GPT. And the goal of it is efficiency, accuracy, and specific formatting. So those are the difference when we say, oh, we're going to use an AI prompt. We're not thinking a writing prompt, but we're thinking more of an input. And here's why prompting matters. So, AI responds based on your wording. So, it depends on your word choice, it depends on how often you use it. We want to avoid vague prompts that lead to generic answers, which we'll talk little bit about later. And clear prompts save time and revision. So, if you've used ChatGPT, for example, and you're constantly revising it, it's because you're not really putting in the correct prompting for it. And really, that just stems from us not having a AI literacy and AI not being taught to us effectively. So that's something that we also have to keep in mind as well. So if we have vague prompts, it could lead to vague answers. If we have clear prompts, it will reduce the unnecessary information that AI outputs to us, and it will save you a lot of time. And then prompting is really less about technology and more about how you're communicating with the tool. So core elements of an effective prompt, most strong prompts will include these three parts. You have context, task, and constraints. So context explains the situation or audience, the background. The task states what you want AI to do, and the constraint shapes the response, right? Such as the length, the format, or the tone. So missing one of these can often lead to weaker results. It will lead to a weaker output. So your context really matters here. Who is the audience? What level or setting do you have it on? Some people have a free version and then some people have a paid version. Those things matter. And then any key background details. Of course, you want to make sure that you are avoiding putting anything personal in there, for ethical or privacy issues, but just basic overall background details that you want the AI tool to know. So adding context helps AI tailor its response to you. And for example, explaining something to a first year college student is going to be different than explaining something to a faculty member. It's going to require different language, right? So every sentence of context can dramatically change the output. Now, the tasks, strong prompts clearly state the task using verbs like summarize, compare, draft, revise, explain. All of these things we tend not to put into ChatGPT when we are inputting something. So when you use clear verbs and you use clear action verbs, it reduces the guessing work, and keeps the response focused on what you actually need. And again, I'll show you an example of it. And you always want to make sure you're doing one main task at a time. So sometimes because we're in a rush, we try to put everything into ChatGPT and it just keeps going. You want to make sure you have one main task at a time. So you want one task thread at a time just to avoid anything. Now, the constraints of it, we have length, format, and tone. So the constraints guides the structure and usefulness of the input and output. So you can specify length, format, tone, or really just anything that you wanted to know very specifically. So for the length, word, sentence, and count. For format, bullets, paragraph, table, and then tone, playing language. Do you want it to be academic or professional? All of these things matter when you're inputting it, right? So, for example, you would ask it for a 150 word summary in bullet point form is more effective than just asking a general explanation of it. Because what happens is, if we see here in the first example, I put into ChatGPT in a new thread, I put explain academic probation. And of course, just like the regular AI, it gave me a whole long list of things, right? And we don't want it to be so generic and so long. Instead, I put explain academic probation to a first year college student, use plain language, and also limit it to 100 words. And then it gave me a little bit more of a better response, something I'm looking for. Now, even the second response, I'll have less revision compared to the first response because it's just too long. So if I'm explaining something to a first year college student, I'm going to assume they may not know as much as somebody who's been there in college maybe for a couple of years, or they have parents or grandparents or family members and friends who have also went to college. So you always want to make sure that you are being specific, and you need to know who your audience is when you're doing your prompting, right? So even with the second prompt, I would condense it even more and say explain academic probation to a first generation first year college student. Use plain language and limit it to, I'll say, like 80 words, right? I want it to be very, very, very short and concise and specific. So depending on what you're using it for, a generic answer may be okay with you, but if you're looking for something more specific, you have to make sure that you are prompting it right, right? So prompting is really a conversation. It works best as a conversation. So you can ask the AI to simplify, expand, or change the tone or provide examples without starting over. So you always want to treat the first response as a draft and not a final product. You wanted to say, okay, I'm going to put this into AI and then I'm just going to see what it comes up with. You can always ask follow up questions as well. That's a really good way to minimize how much revision you're doing as well, and then this would help you revise without starting over. So, some of the key takeaways from this session is clear prompts lead to better results, right? Effective prompting is a transferable skill. So, whether you're tutoring or studying or writing or planning, whatever you're doing, clear instructions lead to better AI support. You always want to start small and experiment and refine as you go. So don't start with a large task or putting everything into one input. you're going to get a very long responsive output that could be overwhelming, and you really won't get a better result, especially if you're using the free version. Your context, tasks, and constraints matter, and prompting is a skill that you practice. So, again, because AI literacy is something that we're not necessarily being taught quite yet, we want to make sure that we are using this effectively, and we're looking at these workshops and sessions and saying, okay, this is how you properly use AI. Um, if you remember one thing from today, I hope it's this, is that, again, better questions will lead to better answers. And that AI is simply a tool, and you are the one that can determine what you get out of it. So I thank you for your participation and attention, and hopefully we will see you at the next session.